A year ago, if someone had asked Mirabelle whether she believed in cursed objects, she would have laughed. She was a practical sort, an aspiring writer who grounded her fiction in realism and subtle tension rather than full-fledged superstition. She used to say, "The scariest things are the things we do to each other, not old ghosts or dusty legends." But that was before she returned to her old hometown and discovered a peculiar bookstore on a quiet, rain-swept street, one she'd never noticed in her youth. An unassuming sign on the door read "The Gloaming Shelf," and from the moment she crossed its threshold, her life twisted into a nightmare of turning pages and real-life horrors she never thought possible. This bookstore, as she'd soon learn, housed an uncanny array of antique books said to whisk unwary readers into the very darkest corners of the stories themselves. Rumors whispered that some who read these books ended up living out grotesque scenes, vanishing entirely from reality. Others came away changed, traumatized by what they'd experienced within the pages. Mirabelle initially dismissed the legends as mere marketing or local rumor. But after her first night inside, after perusing a single battered novel that felt more like a living entity than a relic, she could no longer cling to rational denial. She only wanted a quiet corner to write her new novel. Instead, she found a hidden domain of ephemeral tales, each volume bristling with a supernatural power to warp reality. She tried to step away, but curiosity tugged at her. Soon, Mirabelle found herself ensnared in stories that bled into her own life, culminating in a confrontation with secrets best left unwritten. A year ago, if someone had asked Mirabelle whether she believed in cursed objects, she would have laughed. She was a practical sort, an aspiring writer who grounded her fiction in realism and subtle tension rather than full-fledged superstition. She used to say, "The scariest things are the things we do to each other, not old ghosts or dusty legends." But that was before she returned to her old hometown and discovered a peculiar bookstore on a quiet, rain-swept street, one she'd never noticed in her youth. An unassuming sign on the door read "The Gloaming Shelf," and from the moment she crossed its threshold, her life twisted into a nightmare of turning pages and real-life horrors she never thought possible. This bookstore, as she'd soon learn, housed an uncanny array of antique books said to whisk unwary readers into the very darkest corners of the stories themselves. Rumors whispered that some who read these books ended up living out grotesque scenes, vanishing entirely from reality. Others came away changed, traumatized by what they'd experienced within the pages. Mirabelle initially dismissed the legends as mere marketing or local rumor. But after her first night inside, after perusing a single battered novel that felt more like a living entity than a relic, she could no longer cling to rational denial. She only wanted a quiet corner to write her new novel. Instead, she found a hidden domain of ephemeral tales, each volume bristling with a supernatural power to warp reality. She tried to step away, but curiosity tugged at her. Soon, Mirabelle found herself ensnared in stories that bled into her own life, culminating in a confrontation with secrets best left unwritten. As the weeks went by, Mirabelle found herself drawn back to the Gloaming Shelf repeatedly. Despite feeling unnerved, she was enthralled by the store's rare books. She found unusual references for her writing, eerie local history, accounts of vanishings, lore about books that transport readers into themselves. Each time, Astra greeted her with a knowing smile, offering mild suggestions but never pushing any specific book. One evening, while rummaging a dim corner of the shop, Mirabelle found a slim volume titled "Whispers at the Lost Crossroads." Its cover was cracked red leather, the author's name too faded to read. She opened it to random pages, scanning a story about a deserted crossroad where travelers vanished at midnight. The descriptions were vivid, almost painting the scene in her mind. She felt goosebumps as if physically glimpsing that crossroad. That night, She dreamed of walking a lonely road at midnight, hearing the hush of wind, seeing a spectral figure just beyond a flickering lamppost. She woke in a cold sweat, heart drumming. Oddly, the dream's details matched the story from the book exactly. Shaking it off, she tried to proceed with her day, but the dream left a deep impression. The next time she visited the bookstore, she confronted Astra. "These books, they're too realistic. I'm having nightmares." Astra just nodded with a cryptic calm, stating that some books here choose to reveal truths, or to show possibilities. Mirabelle pressed for clarity. "What do you mean?" The caretaker only gave a faint smile. "Be mindful which volumes you choose. They can open doors." Something about her tone made Mirabelle realize these warnings weren't metaphors but literal truths. The gloaming shelf housed volumes with supernatural influence, bridging dream and reality. Yet even that knowledge didn't deter Mirabelle's curiosity. She began investigating the store's upper shelves, discovering more macabre anthologies. One night, in a lapse of caution, she opened a peculiar tale of an old orchard rumored to claim the souls of unsuspecting travelers. She read it in bed. By morning, she had bruises on her arms she couldn't explain, as if from orchard branches. Fear took root. Word around Greenwood Hollow was that the store had few consistent patrons. One day, Mirabelle encountered another customer leaving as she arrived, a frail man cradling a battered tome. He looked pale, eyes haunted. She overheard him telling Astra, "I can't finish it. It's showing me horrors I never wanted to see." He fled, ignoring Mirabelle's greeting. Inside, Astra only shrugged. "Not everyone is prepared for the stories that choose them," she said, as if describing a natural phenomenon. The next week, rumors circulated that the same man had gone missing. His landlord found his apartment empty. No sign of a struggle. Just vacant. As if he'd never existed. The local police brushed it off, suspecting he left town spontaneously. But some on social media claimed it was the gloaming shelf's doing. That he'd read one of the cursed books and been pulled into its narrative. The speculation churned. Half conspiracy, half urban myth. Mirabelle grew uneasy. She cornered Astra about the vanishings. The caretaker's response was cryptic. "Sometimes the stories claim a person fully if their will is weak or their curiosity too strong. The store is a gateway. Some can return, some cannot." Alarmed, Mirabelle demanded why the store was allowed to operate if it was dangerous. Astra merely repeated, "The books exist beyond moral restrictions. I merely keep them. They were here long before me." That explanation left Mirabelle stunned, unsure how to proceed. Drawn by a twisted sense of duty or obsession, Mirabelle felt compelled to read more, glean more about the store's bizarre phenomenon. She reasoned if she documented the occurrences, she could reveal the store's secret or at least warn others. One rainy night, with thunder rattling the windows, she found a locked glass cabinet near the store's back. It contained 4 or 5 especially old volumes with spines bearing archaic runes. Astra was busy at the front, leaving Mirabelle alone. On impulse, Mirabelle fished out a small pick set from her purse, a leftover from her journalistic stints that required discreet entry in certain investigative hunts. She carefully unlocked the cabinet, retrieving one volume bound in dark green leather. The title glowed faintly in gold lettering, "The Return of Night's Children." The moment she touched it, a subtle static tingled her fingertips. Retreating to a corner table, she opened the volume. Her eyes scanned an opening tale about a cursed carnival that reappeared every century, capturing town's children. The writing was vivid, each paragraph brimming with ominous details. She sensed the store's lights dimming around her, as if the environment recognized her transgression. She read on, enthralled and terrified. losing track of time. She barely registered the final lines describing a character stepping into the carnival's main tent and never stepping out. When she finally closed the book, she realized hours had passed. The store's overhead lamps flickered, revealing a near-empty interior. Astra stood behind her, face calm but eyes flickering with disapproval. "That volume is locked away for a reason," she said quietly. Mirabelle stammered an apology, returning the book to the cabinet. But she'd glimpsed too much. That night, her dreams contorted into nightmarescapes of carnival lights, children screaming, and the stench of rotting cotton candy. She woke up feeling like she'd visited that carnival in real life, still smelling burnt sugar. The next day, as she strolled downtown, Mirabelle spotted bizarre carnival posters plastered on a few decrepit buildings. They read, "The Midnight Carnival. Coming soon, one night only." She nearly dropped her phone in shock. The design matched the carnival she read about in The Return of Night's Children. None of her acquaintances had heard of any traveling carnival. It wasn't in the local paper or official event listings. Yet the posters looked old, with tattered edges, possibly hung overnight. People walked by them ignoring their existence. She rushed to the gloaming shelf, demanding explanations from Astra. The caretaker only gave a sad smile. "You touched the book. Sometimes, its world bleeds into ours. It might be illusions or real, impossible to say until it happens." Furious, Mirabelle accused Astra of letting this hazard exist. The caretaker answered, "I am but a keeper. The choice to read is the reader's alone." It felt infuriatingly passive, but also eerily consistent with the store's existence. Mirabelle left, heart pounding. She realized that if the carnival truly manifested, it might claim unsuspecting victims, like the children in the story. That evening, she paced her apartment, half deciding to flee the entire town. But guilt weighed on her. She'd unleashed this carnival by reading that cursed text. If she left, many could vanish. By midnight, illusions assaulted her senses. In her peripheral vision, carnival lights glimmered through her windows. Faint calliope music drifted in the wind. Checking outside, she saw only dark streets. She realized the carnival was slowly merging with reality thanks to her reading that book. Desperate, she formed a radical plan. If she destroyed the Return of Night's Children volume, perhaps the emerging carnival would vanish with it. She crept back into the store after hours, breaking in with her lockpick again. The building's interior felt unnaturally quiet. Only the faint smell of old pages and incense. She located the locked cabinet, retrieved the green leather book. Instantly, the overhead lamps flickered, the store's floor seeming to vibrate. She ignored it, raced to a back alley with a can of lighter fluid and matches. Once outside in the drizzling night, she placed the book on the damp pavement, doused it. The second she lit a match, a gust of wind nearly blew it out, but she forced the flame onto the fluid. The pages ignited. For a moment, the flames caught, the book's edges curling. She felt a surge of hope, but then a searing wind blew from nowhere, extinguishing the flames. The book remained, edges singed but intact. She tried again, same result. On the third try, arcs of static electricity crackled around the book, repelling the fire. She watched in horror as the scorch marks slowly disappeared, the cover reforming as though alive. Overwhelmed, she retreated, leaving the book. The store's back door opened on its own, the gloom within beckoning. She realized the book refused to be destroyed by normal means. Within 2 nights, the rumored carnival arrived, in the outskirts of Greenwood Hollow. Vacant fields near an old industrial site lit up at dusk with gaudy neon signage for the midnight carnival. Some locals were lured by free admission posters. Others scoffed it as a scam. But the atmosphere around town thickened with a surreal gloom. Everyone felt on edge. Mirabelle recognized the scene exactly from the book's final chapters, a carnival that appears out of nowhere, invites unsuspecting visitors, then disappears before dawn, taking its participants with it. She attempted to warn people via social media and local flyers, do not attend the carnival that's spontaneously appeared. It's dangerous. People may vanish. She was largely ignored or ridiculed. The lure of free entertainment overcame caution. As the night of the carnival opened, crowds trickled in. Mirabelle, frantic, decided to face it directly. If she had inadvertently unleashed this horror, she had to try saving them. At midnight, she approached the carnival grounds. At the entrance stood a battered sign reading "One night only. Enter at your own risk." The book's final chapter described a ringmaster who orchestrated illusions, capturing souls. Mirabelle felt an almost tangible force tugging her forward. Lights twinkled overhead. Music played from nowhere. A swirl of sinister cheer. She gulped, stepping in. Inside, the carnival was labyrinthine. Each path lined with rickety booths hosting bizarre games or concessions. She recognized them from the cursed book's descriptions. The place reeked of stale popcorn and a faint copper tang. She saw families, couples, wandering wide-eyed, enchanted by the illusions, a contortionist with impossible limbs, a fortune-teller with empty eye sockets. Alarm soared in Mirabelle's chest. She ran from booth to booth, urging people to leave. Some ignored her. Others told her to lighten up. The carnival's illusions enthralled them. Lights flickered overhead. The calliope music slowed, warping. The environment itself seemed to shift. She glimpsed a child vanish behind a curtain. No reaction from passers-by. She forced her way toward the main tent, half expecting to find the ringmaster. Instead, she found a swirling black void in the center ring, reminiscent of the swirling darkness she'd seen in her nightmares. She realized with horror that each person who stayed too long risked being drawn into that void. Desperate, she shouted for everyone to run. A few scoffed. Others seemed half entranced. She saw a father searching for his missing daughter. Another older couple wide-eyed with confusion. The illusions had the crowd in thrall. Suddenly, a silhouette emerged from the swirling darkness, like a ringmaster in tattered finery. Though its face lacked features, she recognized it from the final pages of The Return of Night's Children. The entity pointed an elongated cane at her, as if welcoming or accusing her. She felt an invisible force clamp her breath. The hush enveloped the tent. A hush that swallowed all music, all sound, summoning her last reserves of will. Mirabelle recalled the store caretaker's cryptic words, "Books open doors." If the carnival existed because the book was read, maybe she could unravel it by denying the story's ending. The final chapters had the ringmaster triumph, absorbing all who attended. But she refused that outcome. She forced her eyes shut, recalling each line she read, then mentally rewriting the finale. In her mind, she pictured the carnival's illusions fading, the ringmaster defeated. Through the hush, she advanced, trembling, toward that swirling darkness in the center ring. The silhouette hissed. Shapes around her flickered. She seized the cane from the ringmaster's grasp in an unexpected burst of defiance. The hush wavered. She pointed it at the swirling void, imagining the pages being undone. The illusions around the tent shimmered as if someone tore them at the seams. A jolt of pure dread hammered her mind, nearly toppling her. But she pressed on. chanting words of her own creation. This story does not end in your triumph. This carnival dissolves, releasing its captives. She visualized the text of the cursed book rewriting. The ringmaster roared in a voiceless scream. The swirling darkness stuttered. Sparks of static flickered. All around, carnival booths dimmed, the thrall on visitors loosening. People looked around in confusion, some dropping cotton candy, others stepping away from twisted rides. Mirabelle felt her body near collapse, but the hush receded. The ringmaster dissolved into black mist that sank into the dirt, leaving only the battered cane behind. The carnival infrastructure flickered out like dying neon. People began fleeing. In seconds, the entire carnival vanished, leaving only darkness under the moon and an empty field. Mirabelle collapsed, panting, the cane disintegrating in her grip. The illusions were banished, for now. The next day, newspapers bafflingly reported no carnival. Some who attended denied memory of the event, attributing it to a strange dream. A handful recalled fragments of a bizarre fair, but their accounts were disjointed. Mirabelle's warnings that the gloaming shelf's cursed book had conjured it sounded outlandish. Many simply forgot or refused to believe. Yet a small group recognized her efforts, quietly thanking her for saving them or their loved ones. She returned to the gloaming shelf to confront Astra, but the caretaker was absent. The store's door was locked. A sign read "Closed indefinitely." Peering through the window, she saw shelves in disarray, as though the entire stock had vanished overnight. She was both relieved and dismayed. Was the caretaker gone for good, taking the monstrous books with her? Or had they simply relocated? The building's landlord claimed no recollection of a caretaker named Astra. Another puzzle. Another loose thread. Days passed, and no further illusions manifested. Greenwood Hollow resumed its normal hush. Some insisted the story was just sensational rumor. Others quietly believed the carnival had almost claimed them. Mirabelle tried explaining to a few local journalists, but they brushed her off. She compiled everything into a thorough personal account, saving digital backups. She felt calmer, though she worried about where Astra and the cursed volumes might reappear. Then, in the quiet after the storm, a neighbor discovered a single battered novel in Mirabelle's mailbox, The Return of Night's Children, the same volume she'd tried to burn. She recognized it instantly, her stomach twisting. A single note pinned inside read, "Stories never truly end, only begin anew." Her blood froze. Even though she'd undone the carnival, the book still persisted, waiting for the next reader. Possibly the caretaker left it as a final souvenir or a warning that these horrors might return. Distraught, Mirabelle realized she'd been entrusted with this cursed volume, or perhaps burdened by it. If she destroyed it physically, it might reform. If she gave it away, another might suffer. She considered burying it, sealing it in steel, but something told her it would find a path back. The store caretaker's cryptic stance echoed in her mind. The books exist beyond moral restrictions. She wept, comprehending that the unstoppable nature of these stories ensured no permanent solution, only vigilance. In a final moment of resolve, she stored the battered novel in a secret trunk, locked it tight, moved it to her friend's remote cabin in the woods, hoping it would remain hidden for good. She made no mention to anyone. Yet each night, she dreams of carnival lights flickering in the corners of her vision, waiting for someone to open the trunk. She wonders if the caretaker or some future soul will unearth it, unleashing monstrous illusions upon the town. She can only pray that day never comes. And so, life in Greenwood Hollow drifts back to normalcy for now. But among the quiet streets, rumors linger about a haunted bookstore that vanished overnight. about old tomes that can devour reality, about a midnight carnival that no one admits to attending. If you find yourself strolling in a small town, discovering a quaint, antiquated bookstore with shelves of suspiciously archaic volumes, perhaps think twice before you open one. After all, the pages might be more than stories, they might be doorways, each leading to a realm that wants you as its newest protagonist or victim.